Affairs analyst Kimberly Dozier. Kim, good morning to you. Let's start here with the development of this maritime aid corridor. There are also now the airdrops from the U.S. and other nations. You're back from a week in Baghdad. What's the reception, the reaction to now this degree of aid beyond what's coming through Rafah there? How is this being received?
The sentiment is a lot of too little, too late. People across the Arab world, and especially where I just was in Baghdad, see the U.S. as allied with everything Israel is doing on the ground in its prosecution of the campaign against Hamas inside Gaza. And there's also deep skepticism that any sort of increased aid will actually reach the Palestinian people. Just to take a look at some of the attempts to deliver the aid from the south, what frequently happens is at the point of delivery, or even the trucks trying to make their way north, get overwhelmed by starving people or by gangs that want to grab the supplies and then sell it to those starving people. So the question is, who's going to maintain security when these supplies are delivered onto that beachside seashore or at any northern point that the Israelis agree to open up? That has been one of the reasons that they've said they're reluctant to open up a northern border, is that it would put more Israeli troops in harm's way, with Hamas taking pot shots at the Israeli troops. That's the risk or the fear articulated. And the same thing could happen to Western troops that try to facilitate aid onto Gaza's shore.
The ceasefire and the hostage release that the president and others had hoped to broker to start before the beginning of Ramadan, which is Sunday evening, unlikely to happen. So what does this next phase of the war, both militarily with this operation in Rafah that is likely to come from the IDF, and geopolitically as we watch this next phase, what are the ramifications as this ceasefire does not begin?
Well, from Hamas's perspective, it put the cost for a ceasefire very high. And by refusing to allow a ceasefire, it knows it's not going to head off essentially an offensive by the Israelis in Rafah, an offensive that is aimed at hitting the top Hamas leadership, and also the Israelis believe uncovering a network of tunnels between Gaza and Egypt that Israel believes facilitated the delivery of the kind of supplies that helped Hamas carry out the October 7th attack. So if you've got another Israeli assault going on an even more populated area, this will further enrage the Arab and Muslim world and further strengthen the Palestinian cause as Hamas sees it. Again, that's some of what I heard in Iraq. They see this as an unjust assault against the Palestinians, and they see it as Israel also trying to prove to the Arab world that, hey, we are still as invincible and strong as you always thought we were. Don't think that because October 7th happened, you can catch us unawares. And the Arab world, Iraqis, believe that the Palestinians are bearing the brunt of that message and that we've got more to come with a Rafah assault.
I want to ask you about that. And when I saw this, I knew I wanted to talk to you about this come to Jesus meeting that President Biden said after his State of the Union, caught on a hot mic, that he wanted to have with Benjamin Netanyahu. First of all, I imagine the president knew that would be picked up. He's been going to these addresses since the 70s, and he knows there are cameras around. What is on the other side of a come to Jesus meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu? Is there any scenario in which aid would become conditional or military support would be withdrawn? What does that look like?
Netanyahu knows that Biden is in a tough place politically, that if he were to somehow withdraw military aid right ahead of a presidential election, that would be a club that the GOP, that Trump would use against him. So yes, Biden can push Netanyahu hard, but Netanyahu is also fighting for his own political survival against his internal opposition, even members of his war cabinet who want his job. to stay together, to keep his government together for another 3 years without it falling apart and triggering elections, he's got to keep the right-wing fringe of his government happy, and they don't want to see any concessions. They don't want to see a ceasefire. So in a sense, Biden has a lot to lose politically, but he can yell all he wants because Netanyahu has more to lose.
Yeah, and certainly now after there's this publicized come to Jesus meeting moment, Netanyahu is less likely to heed the calls of the U.S. Kim Dozier, always enjoy the conversation. Thanks so much.
There's still plenty ahead here on CNN This Morning. Up next, a southern soaker. Millions of people from the Florida Panhandle to North Carolina. They are bracing for flash flooding and even the